She thought she had the perfect life, penthouse apartment, successful tech mogul husband, and a baby on the way. But at 2 a.m., while 7 months pregnant, Sarah discovered the devastating truth that would destroy everything. When her husband finally crossed the unforgivable line, her single 911 call didn't just save her life, it brought down his entire empire and went viral with millions of views. This is how one pregnant woman's courage exposed a narcissist's darkest secrets and sparked a movement still inspiring women today. Smash that like button if you're ready for this incredible story of justice and revenge. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this ends. Subscribe for more true stories of courage over cruelty. The security camera footage was crystal clear. Ryan Mitchell, Austin's golden boy tech mogul, being led away in handcuffs while reporters shouted questions about domestic violence charges and financial fraud. His perfectly pressed designer shirt was wrinkled, his confidence shattered. But this story began 48 hours earlier, in the marble and glass penthouse that had once represented everything Sarah Mitchell thought she wanted. At 2 a.m, 7 months pregnant and unable to sleep, Sarah scrolled through Instagram with shaking fingers. Ashley Chen's story updates glowed on her phone screen like tiny daggers to her heart. Champagne flutes at the Four Seasons, designer handbags spread across silk sheets, a man's shadow in expensive Italian leather shoes Sarah had bought for her husband's birthday just 3 months ago. The baby kicked hard against her ribs, as if sensing her distress. Sarah placed both hands on her swollen belly, whispering soft reassurances she didn't feel. The penthouse felt cavernous around her, all cold surfaces and sharp edges that had once seemed sophisticated but now felt like a beautiful prison. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ryan, "Working late, don't wait up." Working late, at 2:30 in the morning, while his 24-year-old assistant posted photos of room service caviar and champagne. Sarah had built her career in marketing before the pregnancy. She understood branding, image crafting, the careful construction of public personas. What she hadn't understood was how easy it would be for someone to use those same skills to gaslight her into questioning her own reality. For months, she'd made excuses. Ryan was under pressure with the company going public. The pregnancy hadn't been planned, and he needed time to adjust. Ashley was just enthusiastic about her job, maybe a little too active on social media, but that was how her generation communicated. But tonight, something had shifted. Maybe it was the baby's increasingly irregular heartbeat during her last ultrasound, or the way the doctor had frowned at the stress-related complications in her chart. Maybe it was the realization that she'd become completely financially dependent on a man who couldn't even be bothered to come home while she was carrying his child. The elevator chimed softly in the distance, and Sarah's heart rate spiked. She quickly closed Instagram and pretended to be asleep, pulling the Egyptian cotton sheets up to her chin. Through barely opened eyes, she watched Ryan stumble into their bedroom, reeking of expensive perfume that definitely wasn't hers. He didn't even look at her as he headed straight for the shower, his phone buzzing constantly with what she assumed were messages from Ashley. The water ran for 20 minutes, long enough to wash away evidence of his betrayal before sliding into bed beside his pregnant wife. As Ryan's breathing deepened into sleep, Sarah stared at the ceiling and made a decision that would change everything. She was done being the understanding wife, done making excuses, done protecting the reputation of a man who clearly had no respect for her or their unborn child. Tomorrow, she would start looking for answers. What she would find would destroy the perfect facade they'd built together and expose the dark reality beneath Austin's most celebrated power couple. But first, she had to survive what was coming next. Sarah's phone rang at 7:15, jolting her from the light sleep she'd finally managed. Dr. Martinez's voice was carefully controlled, but Sarah caught the underlying concern immediately. Mrs. Mitchell, I need you to come in today. The baby's heart rate patterns from yesterday's monitoring are showing some irregularities that require immediate attention. Ryan was already in the shower, his phone buzzing incessantly on the nightstand. Ashley's name flashed on the screen with heart emojis that made Sarah's stomach churn. Ryan, Sarah called through the bathroom door. I need to go to the doctor today. The baby's heart rate is irregular. The water shut off abruptly. Can't it wait? I have the investor presentation at 10, then lunch with the Goldman team. This IPO timing is critical. Sarah, our baby's health is critical too. The words came out sharper than she intended. Ryan emerged from the bathroom, towel around his waist, jaw already set in that familiar expression of irritation. Look, you've been anxious this entire pregnancy. Maybe the irregular heartbeat is just reflecting your stress levels. Have you considered that your constant worrying might be affecting the baby? The accusation hit like a physical blow. Sarah had been managing her anxiety carefully, doing prenatal yoga, meditation, everything the pregnancy books recommended. But Ryan had a way of twisting her legitimate concerns into character flaws. Dr. Martinez specifically said, this needs immediate monitoring. I'm not making this up. Fine. Ryan grabbed his phone, glancing at Ashley's messages before looking back at Sarah. But I can't go with you. This presentation determines whether we get the Series C funding or not. Blake's already at the office setting up. Sarah felt the familiar hollow ache of abandonment, but this time anger flickered alongside it. When was the last time you came to a doctor's appointment with me? When was the last time you asked how I'm feeling, or how the baby is developing, or whether I need anything? Don't be dramatic. I'm working 18-hour days to provide for this family. Someone has to think about our financial future. But as Ryan said it, his phone buzzed again. This time, instead of Ashley's name, Sarah caught a glimpse of the message preview. Last night was incredible. Can't wait for round 2 tonight. The words hung in the air between them like poison. Ryan's face went pale as he realized what she'd seen. Sarah, that's not, it's a business contact. Ashley was helping me prepare for the presentation last night, and stop. The word came out quietly, but with absolute finality. Just stop lying to me. For a moment, Ryan looked like he might try a different approach, maybe even tell the truth. Instead, his expression hardened into the cold businessman mask she'd seen him use with competitors. I don't have time for your paranoid jealousy today. Go to your doctor's appointment. Call an Uber. I'll transfer money to your account for the copay. He dressed quickly, grabbed his briefcase, and headed for the door. At the threshold, he turned back with what might have been genuine concern, or might have been calculated image management. Sarah, I do care about you and the baby, but I need you to trust me right now. This IPO will set us up for life. Everything I'm doing is for our family. After he left, Sarah sat on the edge of their king-sized bed, hands pressed against her belly, feeling the baby's restless movements. Her reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows showed a woman she barely recognized, pale, exhausted, isolated in a glass tower high above the city. Her phone buzzed with a bank notification. Ryan had transferred exactly $50 to her account, not enough to cover the copay and an Uber to the medical center across town, but apparently all he thought she was worth. Sarah opened her laptop and checked their joint account balances for the first time in months. What she found made her blood run cold. Large transfers to accounts she didn't recognize, automatic payments to luxury hotels, and a recurring monthly payment to something called AC Consulting Services for $25,000. Ashley Chen. AC Consulting Services. Her husband wasn't just cheating on her. He was paying his mistress a salary that was more than most people's annual income. The Uber driver kept glancing at Sarah in the rearview mirror as she clutched her belly, breathing through increasingly painful contractions that had started during the 20-minute ride to the medical center. What had begun as routine monitoring had quickly escalated when Dr. Martinez saw the latest readings. "Mrs. Mitchell, I need to be direct with you," Dr. Martinez said, reviewing the fetal heart monitor strips. "The baby is showing signs of significant distress. Your blood pressure is dangerously elevated, and these contractions suggest your body is preparing for premature labor." Sarah's hands trembled as she gripped the hospital bed rails. At 7 months, the baby would survive, but the complications could be severe. What's causing this? Is it something I did wrong? Stress can absolutely trigger these symptoms. Have there been any major changes or challenges in your life recently? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Sarah thought about Ryan's lies, the financial manipulation she'd discovered, the isolation she'd been feeling for months. But admitting the truth felt like acknowledging her own failure as a wife and mother. "My husband's company is going public. It's been a stressful time for both of us." Dr. Martinez nodded knowingly. She'd probably seen this before successful men whose wives paid the physical price for their ambition. "I need to admit you for monitoring. We'll try to stop the contractions and stabilize both of you." "I should call my husband," Sarah said, reaching for her phone. "Absolutely. Given the circumstances, he should be here." Sarah dialed Ryan's number, but it went straight to voicemail. She tried 3 more times with the same result. Finally, she called his office directly. "Mitchell Ventures. This is Jessica speaking." "Hi, Jessica. This is Sarah Mitchell. I need to reach Ryan immediately. I'm at the hospital with pregnancy complications." There was a pause. "Oh, Mrs. Mitchell, I'm sorry, but Mr. Mitchell is in the Goldman Sachs presentation and specifically asked not to be disturbed. Can I take a message? Can you take a message?" Sarah's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. "I'm in the hospital, potentially going into premature labor with his child. Please interrupt whatever he's doing and get him on the phone now. Let me see what I can do." 20 minutes passed, then 30. The contractions were getting stronger, and Dr. Martinez was preparing to administer medication to stop them. Sarah's phone remained silent. She tried Blake Morrison, Ryan's business partner, hoping he might be able to reach Ryan when she couldn't. Blake Morrison speaking. "Blake, it's Sarah. I'm at St. David's Hospital with pregnancy complications. I can't reach Ryan, and I really need him here." "Oh shit. Sarah, I'm sorry. Ryan's not actually at the Goldman presentation right now. He stepped out about an hour ago, said he had to handle something urgent." The words hit Sarah like cold water. Ryan had lied to his own business partner about where he was going. While she was fighting to keep their baby safe, he was probably with Ashley, ignoring 17 missed calls from his wife. "Blake, can you please try to find him? This is serious." "Of course. I'll track him down and send him straight to the hospital." But as Sarah lay in the hospital bed, receiving IV medications to stop her premature labor, watching other expectant fathers pace the hallways with worried expressions, she began to understand something fundamental about her marriage. She was completely alone. The realization should have been devastating, but instead, it was almost liberating. For months, she'd been trying to hold together a relationship with someone who had already checked out. She'd been making excuses for behavior that was inexcusable, protecting someone who wouldn't cross the street to protect her. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ryan, sent 3 hours after her first emergency call. "Got your messages. Sounds like false alarm since you're texting. We'll try to swing by later if meetings wrap up early." False alarm. as if nearly losing their baby was an inconvenience to his schedule. Sarah turned off her phone and placed both hands on her belly, feeling the baby's movements gradually calm as the medication took effect. She made a silent promise to the child growing inside her things were going to change, starting now. She just had no idea how much worse things would get before they got better. Blake Morrison arrived at the hospital before Ryan did, carrying coffee and genuine concern that stood in stark contrast to her husband's absence. Sarah had known Blake for 3 years, watching him build Mitchell Ventures alongside Ryan, but she'd never seen him look this uncomfortable. "Sarah, I'm really sorry about Ryan. I honestly don't know where he went after the presentation. He just said he had to handle something personal." Something personal, while his wife was fighting to keep their baby from being born 3 months early. "Blake, can I ask you something? And can you promise to be honest with me?" Blake's expression grew cautious, but he nodded. "Of course. How long has Ryan been having an affair with Ashley?" The question hung between them like a live wire. Blake's coffee cup froze halfway to his lips, and his face confirmed what Sarah had suspected for months. "Sarah, please don't lie to me. I can't take any more lies." Blake set down his coffee and looked directly at her. "About 6 months. Maybe longer. I've tried talking to him about it, but he says it's not serious. Just stress relief during the IPO process." Stress relief. Sarah felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. "Has he been paying her through the company?" "How did you—" "Yes. $25,000 a month through a consulting contract. I told him it was risky, especially with the SEC review for the IPO, but he said it was legitimate marketing services." "Marketing services?" Sarah laughed bitterly. "I used to be a marketing executive. Blake, I know what legitimate consulting contracts look like." Blake leaned forward, his voice dropping. "Sarah, there's something else you need to know. Ryan's been moving personal assets into offshore accounts, Cayman Islands, Switzerland. He says it's tax optimization for post-IPO wealth management, but you think he's preparing for something else?" "I think he's preparing for the marriage to end, and he's trying to hide assets from the divorce settlement." The words should have been shocking, but instead they felt like puzzle pieces clicking into place. Ryan's emotional distance, his financial control, his complete dismissal of her needs during the pregnancy he'd been planning his exit strategy for months. "Blake, why are you telling me this?" Blake was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. "Because I have a daughter. She's only 5, but I can't imagine treating my wife the way Ryan's treating you, especially while she's carrying my child. And because I think you deserve better than being blindsided by whatever he's planning." Before Sarah could respond, Ryan finally burst through the hospital room door, looking harried and smelling like he'd doused himself in cologne to cover other scents. His designer shirt was wrinkled, and his hair was mussed in a way that suggested he'd been running his hands through it, or someone else had. "Sarah, thank God you're okay. Blake told me you were in premature labor." "Is the baby is stable for now," Dr. Martinez interrupted, entering with Sarah's latest test results. "But I need to discuss some concerns with both parents." Ryan immediately shifted into his public persona concerned husband, successful businessman, man in control. "Doctor, whatever resources you need, cost is no object. We want the best care possible." "The issue isn't resources, Mr. Mitchell. It's stress management. Your wife's blood pressure is dangerously elevated, and the baby is showing signs of distress that correlate directly with maternal anxiety levels." "Well, what's causing her anxiety?" "Everything's been fine at home." Sarah stared at her husband in amazement. He could lie so smoothly, so convincingly, even to a medical professional who was trying to save his child's life. Mr. Mitchell, Dr. Martinez continued, pregnancy requires emotional support from partners. Your wife mentioned you've been working long hours, missing appointments, and that communication has been difficult. I've been securing our family's financial future. The IPO requires Ryan. Sarah's voice cut through his rehearsed explanation. Stop performing for the doctor and tell the truth. When was the last time you asked how I was feeling? When was the last time you came to a doctor's appointment? When was the last time you came home at a reasonable hour and had dinner with your pregnant wife? Ryan's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and calculated underneath. Sarah, you're being dramatic. The stress of the pregnancy is making you emotional. It was the same gaslighting technique he'd been using for months, but now, in front of witnesses, Sarah could see it clearly for what it was. Blake cleared his throat uncomfortably. Ryan, maybe we should talk about adjusting your schedule. The IPO presentation went well today. Goldman's interested. You could probably take some time to... The presentation went well because I've been focused on what matters, Ryan snapped. I can't be everywhere at once. But Sarah had caught something in Blake's expression, a look of confusion, almost recognition. Blake, Sarah said carefully. What time did the Goldman presentation end? Around noon. We wrapped up. They seemed impressed. And then Ryan said he had to handle something urgent. Sarah looked at Ryan, whose face had gone carefully blank. You left the office at noon. It's now 8 p.m. Where have you been for 8 hours while your wife was in the hospital? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Ryan's phone, which had been buzzing constantly, lit up with another message. This time, Sarah was close enough to read the preview. Can't wait to see you again tomorrow night. Last night was amazing. Love. Even Blake saw it. The room went dead silent, except for the steady beeping of the fetal heart monitor. Ryan grabbed his phone and shoved it into his pocket. I think you need rest. Sarah, this interrogation isn't good for the baby. You're right, Sarah said quietly. This isn't good for the baby. None of this has been good for the baby. As Ryan left the hospital room with muttered excuses about early meetings, Sarah felt something fundamental shift inside her. The scared, isolated woman who had been making excuses for months was disappearing, replaced by someone harder, clearer, and much more dangerous to Ryan's carefully constructed world. Blake lingered after Ryan left, his expression troubled. Sarah, I want to help. This isn't right, and I think you're going to need allies. Sarah looked at him carefully. Why would you risk your business partnership to help me? Because some things matter more than money, and because I think Ryan's about to make some very stupid decisions that could destroy everything we've built together anyway. As Sarah settled back into the hospital bed, feeling the baby's movements gradually calm under medical supervision, she began forming a plan. Ryan thought he was controlling the narrative, managing his image, protecting his assets. He was about to learn that his pregnant wife was much smarter, much stronger, and much more strategic than he'd ever given her credit for. Sarah spent 2 days in the hospital under observation, 2 days during which Ryan visited for exactly 27 minutes total. She'd timed him. He brought flowers that were clearly meant for someone else, judging by the card that read, "Thanks for an amazing night. Can't wait for more," in handwriting that definitely wasn't the florist's. Blake, meanwhile, had visited every day, bringing real updates about the IPO process and increasingly disturbing information about Ryan's financial movements. He transferred another $200,000 yesterday, Blake told her quietly while Ryan was on a phone call in the hallway. This time to an account in the Cayman Islands. And Sarah, there's something else. Blake's expression was grim as he pulled out his phone. I've been documenting everything. Just in case, Ryan's been sloppy, probably because he thinks you're not paying attention. Look at this. The screen showed a series of text messages between Ryan and Ashley, screenshots Blake had somehow obtained. Sarah's hands trembled as she read them. Ashley, when are you going to tell her I'm tired of sneaking around? Ryan, after the IPO, need to keep everything stable until then. She's already causing problems with the pregnancy drama. Ashley, the pregnancy drama, Ryan. She's carrying your baby. Ryan, allegedly. At this point, I'm not even sure the baby is mine. She's been so emotional and erratic. Who knows what she's been doing while I'm working? The accusation hit Sarah like a physical blow. Ryan was publicly questioning the paternity of their child, a child conceived during a planned romantic weekend in Napa Valley, a child he'd seemed excited about until Ashley entered the picture. There's more, Blake said gently. I'm sorry. Sarah, I debated whether to show you this. Ashley, what if she finds out about the money, Ryan? She won't. I've been controlling the finances for months. She doesn't even look at the accounts anymore. By the time the divorce is final, most of our assets will be protected offshore. Ashley, and if she fights it, Ryan, she won't have the resources. I'll make sure of that. Sarah stared at the messages, feeling a strange calm descend over her. The man she'd married, the man whose child she was carrying, was planning to leave her destitute and publicly question their baby's paternity. Blake, how did you get these messages? Blake looked uncomfortable. Ashley's been trying to get closer to me, thinking I might be useful for her career. She's not as smart as she thinks she is. I've been recording our conversations and screenshots when she shows me things on her phone. Recording conversations? Blake, what are you not telling me? Blake was quiet for a long moment, then pulled out a small device. I've been documenting everything for months. Not just the affair, but the financial fraud, the asset hiding, everything. I thought I was protecting the company, but I realize now I was really protecting you. Sarah felt a flicker of hope, then immediate suspicion. Why? What do you get out of helping me? Honestly, I think Ryan's lost his mind. The way he's handling this is going to destroy the company, destroy the IPO, and probably land him in jail for securities fraud. I've built Mitchell Ventures too. Sarah, I'm not going to let him take it down because he can't keep his dick in his pants. The crude language was so unlike Blake's usual professional demeanor that Sarah knew he was telling the truth. But as she looked at the evidence he'd gathered, a different possibility occurred to her. Blake, show me everything you have. All of it. Over the next hour, Blake revealed a paper trail that was staggering in its scope. Ryan hadn't just been hiding money from their divorce settlement, he'd been embezzling from the company, using investor funds for personal expenses, and creating fake consulting contracts to pay not just Ashley, but several other women. Jesus, Sarah whispered. He's been running a sexual harassment empire through company funds. Blake, this isn't just divorce fraud. This is federal crime territory. I know. That's why I've been documenting everything. When this comes out, and it will come out, I need to be able to prove I wasn't involved. Sarah looked at Blake with new understanding. You're not just helping me out of the goodness of your heart. You're covering your own ass. Can't it be both? Blake's smile was rueful. Look, Sarah, I genuinely think you're getting screwed over, and I genuinely care about you as a person. But yes, I'm also trying to save my own career and avoid federal prison. The honesty was refreshing after months of Ryan's manipulations. At least Blake was being straightforward about his motivations. What do you want from me? I want you to be ready when this explodes, because it's going to explode. Sarah, Ryan's gotten sloppy and arrogant. The SEC is already asking questions about the consulting contracts. When they start digging deeper, they're going to find everything. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Leaving hospital now. Need to prep for tomorrow's investor dinner. Ashley's helping with the presentation materials. Of course she was. Blake, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Okay. Are you attracted to me? Is that part of why you're helping? Blake looked genuinely surprised by the question. Sarah, you're beautiful and smart, and Ryan's an idiot for not appreciating you. But no, this isn't some romantic rescue fantasy. You're 7 months pregnant with another man's baby, going through a devastating betrayal, and dealing with serious health complications. The last thing you need is another man complicating your life. The answer was so matter-of-fact, so lacking in false gallantry, that Sarah felt herself truly trusting Blake for the first time. Then help me destroy him. Blake's smile was sharp and professional. Now you're talking my language. As they began planning Ryan's downfall, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in months: power. For too long, she'd been reactive, defensive, trying to hold together a marriage that was already over. Now she was going to be proactive. Ryan had taught her about business strategy, about identifying weaknesses and exploiting them. He'd shown her how to be ruthless in pursuit of your goals. He was about to learn that she'd been an excellent student. The IPO launch party was held at the Four Seasons, the same hotel where Ashley had been posting Instagram stories for months. Sarah arrived fashionably late, 7.5 months pregnant, in a stunning black maternity dress that accentuated rather than hid her condition. She wanted everyone to remember that Ryan Mitchell was about to become a father. Blake had coached her carefully. They would appear to be having a casual conversation near the bar, but everything they said would be within earshot of key investors and business journalists. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Let Ryan destroy himself with his own arrogance. Sarah. Ryan's voice carried across the crowded ballroom as he spotted her. I wasn't sure you'd make it. The subtext was clear to anyone paying attention. The pregnant wife was unreliable, probably emotional, certainly not an asset to his professional image. I wouldn't miss celebrating your big night, Sarah replied smoothly. After all, this IPO represents our family's future. Ryan's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. He hated when she reminded people that they were married, that his success belonged to both of them under Texas community property law. Ashley materialized at Ryan's elbow, stunning in a red dress that probably cost more than most people's rent. She was playing the role of efficient assistant, but her possessive body language told a different story to anyone bothering to look. Mrs. Mitchell, Ashley said with saccharine sweetness, you look lovely tonight. Pregnancy suits you. The backhanded compliment was delivered perfectly supportive enough to sound professional, condescending enough to establish hierarchy. Thank you, Ashley. Ryan's told me so much about how helpful you've been during his late-night work sessions. The words were innocent on the surface, but several nearby investors glanced between the three of them with obvious interest. Gossip was the lifeblood of Austin's business community, and everyone loved a good scandal. Blake appeared with champagne for the investors and sparkling water for Sarah. Sarah, I was just telling the Goldman team about your marketing background. They were impressed by the pre-IPO strategy. It was a perfectly executed setup. Blake was positioning Sarah as an equal partner in the company's success, not just the pregnant wife decorating Ryan's arm. Actually, Sarah said, accepting the sparkling water, I've been thinking about getting back into consulting after the baby's born. There are so many interesting opportunities in Austin's startup scene. Ryan's jaw tightened. They'd never discussed her returning to work, mainly because he'd been systematically undermining her confidence and isolating her from professional contacts. Honey, Let's focus on getting through the pregnancy first. You've been under so much stress lately. There it was, the public gaslighting, delivered with a concerned husband's smile. But this time, Sarah was ready for it. Stress, I've been remarkably calm, actually. My doctor says the baby's development is perfectly on track now that I'm getting proper rest. She let the implication hang in the air. She was getting proper rest now that she wasn't waiting up for her cheating husband every night. Ashley's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it instinctively. Sarah caught a glimpse of the screen, a message from someone named Ryan Personal with heart emojis. Ashley, Sarah said conversationally. That's an interesting contact name. Very professional. Ashley's face went white as she realized her mistake. Several investors had also seen the screen, and the whispers started immediately. Blake smoothly changed the subject, drawing the investors into a discussion about market timing and regulatory approval. But the damage was done. The whispers were spreading through the party like wildfire. Ryan grabbed Sarah's elbow, his grip just tight enough to hurt. We need to talk. Now. Of course, darling. Blake, would you excuse us? Blake nodded, but his expression was alert. They'd planned for this moment. Ryan led Sarah to a quiet corner near the hotel's terrace, his professional mask slipping as soon as they were alone. What the fuck are you doing? He hissed. Do you have any idea how important tonight is? I'm supporting my husband at his professional triumph. Isn't that what wives are supposed to do? Don't play games with me, Sarah. I know what you're trying to do. What am I trying to do? Ryan, attend a party while 7 months pregnant with your child. Remind people that we're married. Support the company we built together. We didn't build anything together. I built this company while you played house. The words were meant to wound, but instead they clarified everything for Sarah. This was how Ryan really saw their marriage, their partnership, her contributions to his success. Playing house, is that what you call managing your social calendar, hosting your business dinners, networking with investors' wives, and supporting your career while sacrificing my own? You didn't sacrifice anything. You were mediocre at marketing anyway. The cruelty was breathtaking, but Sarah had been preparing for this moment for days. She was ready. Mediocre, like the pre-IPO marketing campaign that impressed Goldman Sachs, like the investor relations strategy that got us the Series A funding, like the social media presence that built your personal brand. Ryan's face was getting red, a sure sign he was losing control. You're delusional if you think. Ryan, Blake's voice interrupted from behind them. We need you back inside. The Goldman partners want to discuss the final terms. Ryan turned away from Sarah, immediately switching back to business mode, but as they walked back toward the party, Sarah caught Ashley's eye across the room. Ashley was surrounded by a group of investors' wives, all of them looking at her with expressions that ranged from pity to contempt. Someone had clearly filled them in on the Ryan personal contact situation within minutes. Ashley had fled to the bathroom, and Ryan was fielding increasingly uncomfortable questions from investors about company culture and leadership stability. Sarah stood at the edge of the ballroom, watching her husband's carefully constructed image crumble in real time. The whispers were getting louder, the looks more pointed, the questions more direct. Blake appeared at her elbow. Phase 1 complete, he murmured. Ready for Phase 2. Sarah placed both hands on her belly, feeling the baby's strong, steady kicks. Her child deserved better than a father who would publicly humiliate his family for his own ego. Let's finish this. The ride home from the IPO party was conducted in Arctic silence. Ryan drove with white knuckles, his jaw set in fury, while Sarah sat perfectly composed in the passenger seat, one hand resting on her belly. Ashley had left the party early in tears after one too many cutting remarks from investors' wives, and the evening had devolved into damage control that hadn't been particularly successful. The penthouse felt different now, not like home, but like a crime scene waiting to be discovered. Sarah moved carefully through the marble and glass spaces that had once impressed her, now seeing them as the expensive prison they'd always been. "We need to talk," Ryan said, loosening his tie with jerky movements. "I'm listening." "What you did tonight was unforgivable. You deliberately sabotaged the most important night of my career." Sarah settled onto the leather sofa, arranging her dress carefully. "I attended your party and made polite conversation. If that sabotaged anything, perhaps the problem isn't with my behavior. Don't." Ryan's voice was deadly quiet. "Don't pretend you don't know exactly what you did. The investors were asking questions about Ashley, about company culture, about my judgment. Goldman's having second thoughts about the valuation. And that's my fault. Yes, it's your fucking fault." The explosion of rage made Sarah flinch, but she didn't back down. "You couldn't just play the supportive wife for one night. You had to make everything about your petty jealousies and insecurities." "Petty jealousies? Is that what you call a husband's affair?" Ryan stopped pacing, his expression shifting to something colder and more calculated. "What affair, Sarah? Show me proof of an affair." It was a challenge, delivered with the confidence of someone who thought he'd covered his tracks. Sarah almost smiled. "Do you really want me to answer that question?" "Yes. I want you to admit that you've been creating drama over nothing. Ashley is my assistant. We work closely together. If you can't handle that professional relationship without having paranoid fantasies, maybe you need therapy." The gaslighting was so extreme it took Sarah's breath away, but she was done being manipulated. "Ryan, I know about the offshore accounts. I know about the fake consulting contracts. I know about the embezzlement from company funds. I know about the other women you've been paying through Mitchell Ventures. And I know that you've been planning to leave me destitute while questioning our baby's paternity." Ryan's face went through several changes: surprise, calculation, and finally a kind of cold rage that Sarah had never seen before. "You've been spying on me. I've been protecting myself and our child from a man who's been systematically destroying our family while committing federal crimes." "Federal crimes, Sarah? You sound insane. No one's going to believe." "Blake has everything documented. The financial transfers, the fake contracts, the SEC violations, all of it. He's been recording conversations, taking screenshots, building a case for months." The mention of Blake's betrayal hit Ryan like a physical blow. He staggered backward, his face going white. "Blake wouldn't. He's my partner." "Blake is protecting himself from going to federal prison as your accomplice. He's been very thorough." Ryan's rage was building again, but now it had a desperate edge. "You manipulative bitch! You turned my own business partner against me." "I didn't turn Blake against you. Your own behavior did that. Blake has a daughter, Ryan. He wasn't going to let you destroy her future because you can't control yourself. Blake has a daughter. Blake has a daughter," Ryan mimicked savagely. "What about our daughter? What about our family? What about our family?" Sarah stood slowly, her voice rising. "You've been cheating on me for 6 months while I'm carrying your child. You've been stealing from our joint accounts and hiding assets overseas. You've been publicly humiliating me while planning to leave me with nothing. What exactly have you been doing to protect our family?" Ryan's control finally snapped completely. "I never wanted this baby. You trapped me with this pregnancy, and now you're trying to trap me with marriage to a woman I don't even love anymore." The words hung in the air like poison. Sarah felt something inside her break, but it wasn't her heart. It was the last chain binding her to this man. There it is, she said quietly. The truth. Finally. Yes, the truth. I don't love you. I don't want to be married to you. I don't want to be tied down by some kid I never asked for. Is that clear enough? Sarah looked at her husband's soon-to-be ex-husband and felt nothing but pity. Ryan, I need you to understand something. I've been recording this entire conversation. Ryan's face went slack with shock. You're blowing things out of proportion. I'm under a lot of stress with the IPO. I didn't mean... You meant every word, and tomorrow morning, this recording goes to the SEC, the FBI, and every major business journalist in Austin, along with Blake's evidence of your financial crimes. Sarah, please, think about what you're doing. Think about our baby's future. Do you really want your child growing up knowing that mommy destroyed daddy's career? It was his last manipulation attempt, and it was pathetic. I want my child growing up knowing that mommy had enough self-respect to walk away from a man who called her pregnancy a trap and questioned the baby's paternity. I want my child to know that actions have consequences, even for rich, powerful men who think they're above the law. Ryan's desperation was turning back to rage. You fucking bitch! You think you're going to destroy me? I'll make sure you get nothing in the divorce. Nothing. Actually, Ryan, I think you're about to get nothing, because I'm not just leaving you. I'm making sure everyone knows exactly who you really are. Sarah moved toward the door, but Ryan stepped into her path. You're not going anywhere until we settle this. Move aside, Ryan. No. We're going to figure out how to fix this mess you've created. Sarah looked at her husband blocking her path, his face twisted with rage and desperation, and felt the baby kick hard against her ribs, as if sensing the danger. Ryan, move out of my way. Now. Or what? What are you going to do? Sarah, what happened next would change everything forever. Ryan's hand moved so fast Sarah didn't have time to react. The slap connected with her cheek with a crack that echoed through the marble penthouse, sending her stumbling backward. The force of the blow, combined with her shifted center of gravity from the pregnancy, sent her falling toward the sharp edge of the glass coffee table. Sarah managed to catch herself on the sofa arm, but the impact sent sharp contractions through her belly. The baby kicked frantically, as if trying to protect itself from the violence that had suddenly erupted in its world. Oh God! Ryan's voice was suddenly different, shocked at his own actions. Sarah, I didn't mean to... But Sarah was already reaching for her phone, her cheek burning where he'd hit her. The contractions were getting stronger, and she could feel something wet between her legs. Blood or fluid. She couldn't tell which. 911. What's your emergency? This is Sarah Mitchell at Penthouse 12, Austin Tower, downtown. My husband just struck me, and I'm 7.5 months pregnant. I'm having contractions, and I think I might be bleeding. Ryan's face went white as he realized what she was doing. Sarah, hang up the phone. This is between us. Ma'am, are you in immediate danger? Is your husband still present? Yes, he's here, and I need, Sarah gasped as another contraction hit. I need an ambulance and police officers. Please hurry. Stay on the line. Ma'am, help is on the way. Can you get to a safe location? Ryan was pacing now, running his hands through his hair. Sarah, think about what you're doing. Think about the scandal, the company, everything we've built together. Ma'am, I can hear a male voice. Are you able to move away from him? Sarah was already moving toward their bedroom, phone pressed to her ear. I'm moving to a room with a lock. Send the police quickly. Please. Units are en route. ETA 3 minutes. Ma'am, I need you to stay on the line until officers arrive. From the bedroom, Sarah could hear Ryan making phone calls, probably to his lawyer, maybe to Blake, definitely trying to control the narrative before law enforcement arrived. But it was too late for damage control. The contractions were coming every few minutes now, and Sarah was genuinely terrified that the stress and physical trauma might trigger premature labor. She pressed her hand against her belly, whispering reassurances to the baby while the 911 dispatcher kept her talking. Ma'am, officers are in your building now. Can you let them in? The door code is 4789. Tell them Penthouse 12. The next few minutes moved like a nightmare in slow motion, police officers entering with paramedics behind them, Ryan trying to explain that it was just a marital disagreement, that Sarah was being dramatic due to pregnancy hormones. The female officer's expression growing colder as she saw the handprint still visible on Sarah's cheek. Sir, I need you to step away from your wife and have a seat over there. Officer, this is a misunderstanding. My wife is under tremendous stress with the pregnancy, and she's been having emotional episodes. Sir, sit down and stop talking. The paramedics were checking Sarah's blood pressure and monitoring the baby's heartbeat. The contractions were slowing, but they wanted to transport her to the hospital for observation. Ma'am, do you want to press charges for domestic violence? Sarah looked across the penthouse at Ryan, who was staring at her with a mixture of fury and panic. In a few hours, this would be all over the news. The IPO would be destroyed, his reputation ruined, his carefully constructed image shattered forever. But looking at the handprint on her cheek in the paramedic's mirror, feeling the baby's distressed movements, remembering his words about not loving her and not wanting their child, Sarah knew there was only one answer. Yes, I want to press charges. The officer was already reaching for her handcuffs. Ryan Mitchell, you're under arrest for domestic violence against a pregnant woman. You have the right to remain silent. As they read Ryan his rights, Sarah's phone began buzzing with notifications. Someone in the building had filmed the police cars and ambulance arriving. Someone else had recognized Ryan being led away in handcuffs. Within minutes, the videos were spreading across social media. Ryan Mitchell was trending on Twitter, and the comments were brutal. Blake arrived at the hospital before the ambulance did, his face grim with the knowledge of what this meant for everyone involved. Sarah, are you okay? Is the baby okay? We're both fine, physically. Blake, you know what happens now, right? Blake nodded. The IPO is dead. The SEC investigation will accelerate. And Ryan's about to become the poster child for everything wrong with tech bro culture. As they wheeled Sarah into the emergency room, she caught a glimpse of the news report already playing on the waiting room television. Austin Tech CEO arrested for domestic violence against pregnant wife on night of company IPO launch. The anchor's voice followed her down the hallway. Allegations of financial fraud and extramarital affairs are also surfacing as investors pull out of what was supposed to be this year's biggest tech offering. Sarah closed her eyes and placed both hands on her belly. The baby's heartbeat was strong and steady on the monitor now, no longer erratic with stress. For the first time in months, Sarah felt completely at peace. The nightmare was finally over. But the justice was just beginning. The 911 call leaked within 24 hours. Sarah woke in her hospital bed to Blake holding up his phone with a grim expression. It's everywhere. Sarah, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. The audio is going viral. Sarah's voice played from the phone speaker, calm but frightened. My husband just struck me, and I'm 7.5 months pregnant. I'm having contractions, and I think I might be bleeding. The hashtags were brutal. Cheer Ryan Mitchell, abuser, tech bro violence, pregnant wife beater. But there were others too. Sarah Mitchell survivor to church courageous woman. She calls justice for Sarah. How many views? Sarah asked, surprised by her own calm. The 911 call has 3 million views on TikTok alone. The arrest video is at 8 million. And Sarah... Blake paused, scrolling through his phone. Ashley's trying to distance herself. She posted a statement claiming she had no knowledge of Ryan's violent tendencies and that she was just a professional colleague. Sarah almost laughed. Professional colleague who was getting paid $25,000 a month for consulting services. The internet's not buying it. Someone leaked screenshots of her Instagram stories from the hotel, and people are connecting the dots. She's getting destroyed in the comments. Dr. Martinez entered with Sarah's discharge papers and a concerned expression. Mrs. Mitchell, your vital signs are stable, and the baby appears unharmed. But I want to discuss your support system. Domestic violence often escalates. And, Dr. Martinez, my husband is in jail facing multiple felony charges. I have excellent legal representation, a strong financial position, and allies who are helping me through this process. I'm safer now than I've been in months. The doctor looked relieved. That's exactly what I hoped to hear. Many women in your situation feel trapped by financial dependence or social pressure. It's encouraging to see someone with the resources to protect herself and her child. Blake's phone rang constantly as they prepared to leave the hospital. Goldman Sachs withdrew their offer, he reported. JP Morgan and Deutsche Bank followed within an hour. The IPO is completely dead. What about the SEC investigation? Accelerated. They're freezing assets, interviewing employees, and the FBI wants to talk to both of us about the financial fraud. Sarah, Ryan's looking at serious federal time. Sarah felt a flicker of something not quite satisfaction, but a sense that justice was finally moving in the right direction. Blake, what happens to Mitchell Ventures? Honestly, probably bankruptcy. The investors are fleeing. The media coverage is toxic, and no one wants to be associated with Ryan's name right now. I'm already talking to lawyers about dissolving the partnership and starting over. As they left the hospital, Sarah was surprised to see a small crowd of supporters holding signs, "We believe Sarah," and "Courage over silence." Several were pregnant women themselves, and they cheered when they saw her. A reporter pushed forward with a microphone. Mrs. Mitchell, do you have any comment about your husband's arrest? Sarah paused, considering her words carefully. This would probably be replayed thousands of times across social media. I want other women to know that domestic violence doesn't discriminate based on wealth, education, or social status. It can happen to anyone, and it's never okay. If you're experiencing abuse, please know that there are resources available and that you deserve better. What about the financial fraud allegations? I trust that law enforcement will conduct a thorough investigation and that justice will be served. The crowd of supporters applauded, and several women approached Sarah with their own stories of leaving abusive relationships. Each one reminded her that her decision to call 911 had consequences far beyond her own life. Blake drove her to a downtown hotel where she'd be staying until she could find a more permanent living situation. The penthouse was a crime scene now, and besides, she never wanted to see those marble and glass surfaces again. Sarah, I need to ask you something, Blake said as they sat in the hotel restaurant. What are your plans now, financially, legally, all of it? Sarah sipped her herbal tea, feeling the baby's steady movements. Financially, I'll be fine. The forensic accountants have already started tracing the hidden assets, and Texas community property laws are very clear. Ryan may have thought he was clever, but he forgot that I have a business degree and I understand financial statements. And legally, Ryan will plead out to avoid trial. The evidence is overwhelming, and he can't afford the publicity of the extended court battle. He'll do some jail time, pay substantial restitution, and probably be barred from serving as an officer of any public company. Blake looked impressed. You've thought this through. I've had months to think it through. Blake, I need to know, are you planning to stay in Austin? Probably. Why? Sarah smiled for the first time in days. Because I'm thinking about starting a consulting firm, helping other women who've been financially abused by their partners. There's clearly a market for it, and I have some very relevant experience now. What would you call it? Sarah looked out the hotel window at the Austin skyline, thinking about the viral video of her 911 call, about the women who'd approached her at the hospital, about the second chance she was building for herself and her daughter. Phoenix Consulting, she said, rising from the ashes. Blake raised his coffee cup in a toast. To new beginnings? As Sarah touched her cup to his, she felt the baby kick strongly against her ribs, as if, in approval, the worst was behind them now. The future, whatever it held, belonged to her. 6 months later, Sarah testified in a packed federal courtroom while holding her 3-month-old daughter, Emma. The baby had been born healthy and on time, despite the trauma of the previous months, and she slept peacefully in her mother's arms as Sarah delivered her victim impact statement. Your Honor, domestic violence is not just physical abuse, it's financial manipulation, emotional isolation, and psychological control. It's making a woman question her own reality while systematically destroying her ability to leave. For months, I believed I was the problem, that I was too emotional, too demanding, too paranoid about my husband's obvious affair. Ryan sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, his expensive suits and polished image replaced by the reality of federal custody. He'd pleaded guilty to domestic violence, securities fraud, wire fraud, and tax evasion in exchange for a reduced sentence of 18 months in federal prison. The defendant didn't just steal money from investors and hide assets from our marriage, Sarah continued. He stole my sense of self-worth, my confidence, and nearly stole my daughter's chance at a healthy birth. When I called 911 that night, I wasn't just protecting myself, I was protecting every woman who thinks she deserves to be treated the way Ryan Mitchell treated me. Ashley Chen had already testified as part of her own plea agreement. She'd received probation and community service for her role in the financial fraud, but her social media career was effectively over. The internet had not been forgiving. Judge Patricia Wells sentenced Ryan to 18 months in federal prison, 5 years of probation, $2 million in restitution to investors, and a lifetime ban from serving as an officer or director of any public company. Mr. Mitchell, the judge said, you held positions of trust as a husband, as a CEO, as a steward of investor funds. You violated every one of those trusts in service of your own ego and appetites. The sentence of this court reflects not just your crimes, but your complete failure to accept responsibility for the harm you've caused. After the sentencing, Sarah stood on the courthouse steps with Blake and Detective Maria Santos, who had become her advocate throughout the legal process. The media crowd was smaller now the story had played out over months, and public attention had moved on to newer scandals. How does it feel to have closure? A reporter asked. This isn't closure, Sarah replied, adjusting Emma in her arms. This is justice. Closure is what I've been building for myself and my daughter over the past 6 months. Phoenix Consulting had launched 3 months earlier with Sarah as founder and CEO, Blake as business partner, and Detective Santos as an advisor specializing in financial abuse cases. They'd already helped 12 women navigate divorces from financially abusive partners, recovering over $4 million in hidden assets. Sarah, another reporter called out, do you have any message for other women in similar situations? Sarah looked down at Emma, who was awake now and looking up at her mother with bright, curious eyes. "I want them to know that leaving is possible, even when it seems impossible. I want them to know that their instincts are probably right if something feels wrong. It probably is wrong. And I want them to know that there are people who will believe them, support them, and help them build better lives." As the media crowd dispersed, Sarah walked with Blake toward her car, a practical SUV she'd chosen for safety rather than status. "Any regrets?" Blake asked. Sarah considered the question seriously. "I regret how long it took me to see who Ryan really was. I regret the stress I put my daughter through during the pregnancy. I regret that other women had to go through similar experiences before the pattern became clear. But do you regret calling 911 that night?" Sarah smiled, kissing Emma's forehead. "That was the best decision I ever made. Everything good in my life now stems from that moment of courage." 6 months later, Sarah received a call from Detective Santos. "Sarah, I have a case I think Phoenix Consulting should take. Woman in Westlake Hills. Husband's a tech executive. Very similar pattern to what you experienced. She's 7 months pregnant and scared to leave." Sarah looked at Emma, now crawling around their new home, a comfortable house in South Austin with a backyard and neighbors who baked cookies for new mothers. The penthouse lifestyle seemed like someone else's life now. "Send me the details," Sarah said. "We'll help her." As she hung up the phone, Sarah reflected on how completely her life had changed. The scared, isolated woman who had once made excuses for her husband's cruelty was gone, replaced by someone stronger, clearer, and committed to making sure other women didn't have to endure what she'd survived. Emma babbled happily from her playmat, reaching for colorful toys that Sarah had chosen carefully. No sharp edges, no toxic materials, nothing that could cause harm. Every decision now was filtered through the lens of protection and love, concepts that had been foreign in her marriage to Ryan. The viral video of her 911 call still surfaced occasionally on social media, usually accompanied by messages of support and gratitude from women who had found the courage to leave their own abusive situations. Sarah had stopped reading the comments months ago, but Blake sometimes shared the particularly meaningful ones, women who said her story had saved their lives, children who thanked her for showing them what strength looked like. On Emma's first birthday, Sarah hosted a party in their backyard. Blake came with his daughter. Detective Santos brought homemade tamales, and several of their Phoenix Consulting clients attended with their children. It was the kind of celebration Sarah had dreamed of during those lonely months in the penthouse, genuine, warm, filled with people who cared about each other. As Sarah watched Emma take her first wobbly steps across the grass, surrounded by laughter and love, she felt something she'd almost forgotten existed: complete and total peace. Ryan Mitchell's name occasionally appeared in the news: an early release from federal prison, a failed attempt to start a new company, rumors of continued legal troubles. Sarah felt nothing when she saw these stories. The man who had once controlled her life was now simply irrelevant to it. The viral moment that had started with violence and fear had become something different entirely, a testament to the power of refusing to accept the unacceptable, the importance of believing women, and the possibility of building something beautiful from the ashes of something broken. Sarah Mitchell had learned that sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is pick up the phone and tell the truth. Even when, especially when that truth will destroy the life you thought you wanted. Emma's first word, appropriately enough, was "Mama." It was the sweetest sound Sarah had ever heard.